After 20 years of struggle, her heartwarming words in French transformed a Millionaire'S party. Claire stepped into the grand hall, her heart racing like a drum in her chest. It was a world away from the crumbling streets of her hometown, a small, struggling town still wrestling with echoes of better days. The glitzy chandeliers sparkled above her, casting shadows of longing across her face. She could feel the weight of 20 years of sacrifice, of late nights spent tending to her ailing father, all while dreaming of becoming an artist. Instead, she stood in a room filled with wealth, where laughter bubbled like champagne, but the lives of struggling families were hidden behind closed doors. Her father, a proud veteran from World War II, sat in the audience. His face, lined with years of hardship yet glowing with pride, was her beacon. She thought about the way he had inspired her when she was a little girl, insisting that creativity mattered more than anything else. His encouragement flickered like a fire, urging her forward. Today, she planned to honor that flame, not just for herself, but for her community, so often ignored by people like Derek, the wealthy businessman throwing this extravagant soirée. As she prepared to speak, Claire felt a knot of fear tighten in her stomach. What did she have to offer to these elites? But as their chatter faded and the crowd turned their gaze towards her, she remembered her father's stories from the battlefields of France. She took a breath, steadying herself, and began her heartfelt speech in French. The room fell silent. "We work hard. We are family. We are still here." Her words danced in the air, filled with echoes of struggle and tenacity. For a fleeting moment, awe overtook the crowd. But then, Derek's disdain seeped back into the atmosphere, thickening the tension. Claire saw it in his eyes, a flicker of discomfort as he wrestled with the truth she presented. She spoke of families losing their homes, of children who went to bed hungry. Her voice wove together the stories of her neighbors that had faded into the background noise of this glittering affair. The murmurs of the audience turned to conversations that began to ripple through the hall like waves crashing on shore. Claire felt the pulse of possibility. It was exhilarating. Finally, she could see them people instead of just rich silhouettes in designer suits. Conversations bloomed as she drove her points home, revealing herself and her town's plight to the very people who held the keys to hope. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Claire's voice rang through the hall, it became more than just words. The discomfort shifted, the glitz of the evening dulling with the weight of sudden awareness. People began to awaken, their hearts stirred, caught between the comfort of their privilege and the call for change. Derek looked stricken, as if Claire had pulled the rug from beneath him, confronting him with an uncomfortable mirror reflecting his own dissociation from the lives he had turned away from. Then, it happened. An unexpected confrontation. Claire and Derek stood separated by ideals, yet connected by humanity. Their eyes met deep with honesty, raw with unresolved feelings as they spoke. In that moment, the night morphed from a mere party into something monumental. Would this defining moment bridge the chasm between their worlds? The air buzzed with tension, charged and alive, and as the night held its breath, Claire realized that the fate of her dreams and the spirit of her broken community hung perilously in balance. Would the walls of prejudice and privilege crumble beneath the weight of their open hearts? Claire's heart raced as Derek finally stepped forward, the crowd waiting with bated breath. She was struck by the conflict in his expression, bewilderment, guilt, and an unfamiliar softness she hadn't expected to see. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice tightening as he scanned the room filled with wealthy patrons who had suddenly turned into silent spectators, eyes wide, gripping their glasses of champagne. "I don't want anything from you, Derek," Claire replied, struggling to keep the tremble from her voice. "But we need more than sympathy. We need action." The words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. Around them, murmurs erupted. Some guests shifted uneasily in their seats. Others leaned in, curiosity piqued. Claire knew vulnerability could be a double-edged sword. "What can I possibly do?" Derek asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The bravado he wore like armor was crumbling, revealing a raw vulnerability that made Claire pause. "Open your eyes," Claire urged, emboldened by the warmth of her father's presence behind her. "Listen to the stories. Let's unite the resources you have with the needs of our community." She gestured out, encompassing the entire hall. "This isn't just a party. It's a moment. If you choose to ignore it, you'll miss the chance to make a difference." The air crackled with palpable energy as Derek looked around, the uncertainty in his eyes mingling with something else. Was it determination? The crowd began to stir, discussing amongst themselves, and Claire felt a shift, a change in the atmosphere. Perhaps the moment had transformed them too. Was it too late for Derek to change? "Maybe you're right," he finally said, his voice steadier now, filled with newfound resolve. "I've been blind. I thought charity was enough." "Charity isn't enough," Claire countered passionately. "We need real connections, real partnerships. Can we bring the community together?" Derek closed his eyes for a moment, as if battling an inner storm. A flicker of hope ignited in Claire. Maybe he was ready to break the cycle of indifference. It was in these moments that clarity intersected with possibility. "Maybe," he began, inhaling deeply, "you could show me." The crowd watched closely, some leaning in, eager for what felt like an unexpected alliance. They were no longer just spectators, but participants in this unfolding narrative. Could change really begin here? Tonight? Claire's heart soared and sank all at once, hope and fear intertwining in her chest. If Derek accepted her invitation, it could ignite the very change her town needed. But would he follow through, or allow the weight of his privilege to drown out the voices of those he'd ignored for so long? A silence enveloped them, a moment hung suspended in time. Claire's gaze fixed on Derek, who looked like he was teetering on the edge of a decision that would redefine everything to that moment. An older woman in the audience stood up, her voice shaky yet strong. "I lived in that town, Derek. I saw the suffering. It's about time someone stood up for them." Claire turned to the woman, and her heart swelled. Was this the catalyst they needed? As more voices began to rise in agreement, Claire felt the tide of the room shift, fueled by shared stories, unity, and the brave act of standing together against injustice. Yet, as Derek opened his mouth, preparing to respond, the lights dimmed suddenly, plunging the hall into an unexpected darkness. Gasps filled the air. Had the very fabric of this transformational moment been ripped away? Claire's heart dropped. Was this darkness a sign of things to come, or merely the prelude to something more powerful? The silence in the dark was overwhelming. Claire blinked, her eyes straining to adjust. The murmurs from the audience faded into anxious whispers, creating an eerie yet expectant atmosphere. She could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes searching for answers in the pitch-black void. "Derek?" she called out, her voice trembling. A palpable tremor of uncertainty skated over the crowd. Claire gripped the edge of the table, desperate to hang onto something solid. Suddenly, a pinprick of light flickered to life, illuminating Derek's silhouette. "Is everyone all right?" His voice cut through the obscurity, a beacon of reassurance in the chaos. His call echoed through the hall, sparking reactions of relief, concern, and anticipation. Claire felt a rush of gratitude. In this moment, he was not just the millionaire. He was the man who might just be willing to listen. "We're fine. Just a little shaken," she shouted back, her heart hammering. As the lights flickered back on, Claire was welcomed by a tableau of expressions frozen in various states of surprise and contemplation. Derek stood at the front, frustration evident on his face, but there was something deeper at play, a flicker of resolve. "Sorry about that." He extended a hand, trying to maintain some command over the situation. The crowd collectively exhaled, the tension easing slightly as a few people laughed nervously. Claire seized the moment, her mind racing. This could still be their hour to rewrite the narrative. "Now that we have everyone's attention," Claire said, seizing the moment with escalating confidence, "can we discuss how to build those connections? We've all felt like we're in the dark, and that is not just about these lights." Derek nodded slowly, absorbing her words as if they were a lifeline. "You're right. We need to talk action, not just ideas. What do you propose?" A spark ignited inside Claire. "Let us create a forum, a space for honest dialogue. Your resources, our stories together, they can create real change. We can invite community leaders, artists, activists. Let us build a coalition to take action. Her voice resonated through the audience, the energy amplifying as the idea bloomed. Around her, people exchanged glances filled with curiosity and hope. This was their moment. Before Derek could respond, another voice broke through, an older gentleman with a familiar fire in his eyes. You know, Claire's right. We've been looking for a way to connect, and it often takes someone seeing the truth to push us forward. Cheers rippled through the room. Claire's heart raced. She realized that Derek's walls were starting to crack not just in him, but in the community he had overlooked. There was unity blooming where division had once thrived. Derek hesitated, clearly torn, and Claire saw a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes again. All right, he said finally. I'm in. But it won't be easy. I have no experience with this kind of change. Are you sure you're ready for what that entails? The question hung there, heavier now, filled with potential and uncertainty. What if the community wasn't ready? What if the burden of change proved too great? I don't know if I'm ready, but I'll fight for it. We all will, Claire replied, feeling a surge of determination. You just have to promise to listen and learn. The crowd erupted with applause, and Claire felt a rush of adrenaline. They were on the brink of something big. As Derek took a deep breath, the lights flickering again, fingers crossed for stability, the atmosphere swelled with anticipation. Would he turn this promise into reality? Claire could sense the enormity of the moment, the stakes of their next steps cascading around them like waves pulling back from the shore. With Derek poised to respond, the unease in Claire's stomach ratcheted up a notch. What would he say next, and would it seal their fate or open up new horizons? Derek swallowed hard, glancing around the room, absorbing the energy and faces filled with hope. It was a stark contrast to the heavily guarded man Claire had known. This was a new Derek, one who might just accept the challenge she had thrown down. Okay, Claire, he replied finally, his voice strong, yet still tinged with uncertainty. Let us take a leap of faith together. But I can't promise immediate results. Change doesn't come easy. The hush that fell over the audience was filled with anticipation. Claire's heart raced. We don't need immediate results. Just a starting point. A commitment to try. She glanced at the crowd, drawing strength from their eager expressions. We're willing to put in the groundwork. To start conversations that matter. A ripple of murmurs spread. Derek shifted on his feet, considering her words. What about this forum? How do we even begin to structure it? Claire felt invigorated by the collaborative spirit, as if their combined intentions had created a living, breathing entity in the air. Let us gather interested community members. We can outline everything from goals to project timelines. It'll be like building a house. The foundation must be solid before we can raise the roof. Derek chuckled warmly at that. The audience responded too, laughter breaking the tension and making the air lighter. It was as though Claire's enthusiasm had pulled them closer together, forging connections she hadn't realized were so fragile before AS ideas began to fly. Claire felt buoyed. She scribbled notes as people shared their visions for the future. It felt liberating. Each suggestion was like a fresh brushstroke on a canvas that had been blank far too long. Delivering hope where despair once lingered was intoxicating. But soon, a sense of trepidation crept in. The issues they aimed to tackle were not minor. They were rooted in pain, years of misunderstanding and indifference. Would people be willing to put egos aside? Would the community embrace this new direction? Claire shook off the doubts that threatened to dim her spirit. We can face these challenges together, one step at a time, she affirmed, catching Derek's eye. A silent pact formed between them, sealed in understanding. I want to meet with you regularly, Claire, he said, his voice steady now. Let us strategize. I'll make the resources available. We'll host our first forum right here in 2 weeks. Spread the word. Applause erupted once more, this time carrying an undercurrent of disbelief mixed with joy. Derek, the man they had all idolized and resented at different times, was slowly morphing into a leader. Not a perfect one, but maybe one they could learn from. But as the excitement peaked, Claire noticed Derek's brow furrow in concentration. It was a stark reminder of the burden that lay ahead. The thrill in the air was palpable, yet fear whispered its warning. Suddenly, the room dimmed again, and this time, it wasn't the lights. The mood shifted. Claire felt it in her bones, the invisible weight pressing down. "Claire," Derek called, his voice slicing through the gathering storm. "Will you?" Before he could finish, chaos erupted. A loud crash resonated from the far corner of the hall, cutting him off. Clamoring sounds of panic echoed as people gasped, turning to see what had happened. "What is going on?" Claire shouted, adrenaline igniting every fiber of her being. As Derek moved towards the noise, Claire's heart sank. In that instant, everything felt unsteady, as if those carefully constructed connections were about to unravel. What lurked beyond the chaos? She could only hold her breath, waiting to discover if their fledgling resolve would withstand this new, unexpected challenge. Would the promise of connection survive the storm brewing right before their eyes? The sound of shattering glass shattered the moment of hope that had woven itself into the fabric of the gathering. People surged toward the exit, eyes wide with fear, casting worried glances back toward the source of the disturbance. Claire's chest tightened. She could see Derek moving through the throng, his tall frame no longer a beacon of strength but a target for chaos. "Stay together," Claire called out, raising her voice to cut through the rising panic. Instinct kicked in. She pushed forward, following Derek, a sense of duty stronger than her own fear. If they were going to lead this community, they had to show themselves as steadfast, even in a moment like this that a man had stumbled and fallen, surrounded by a sea of people rushing out. Claire's heart sank at the sight of a bloodied hand struggling to gather scattered items, papers fluttering like frightened birds around him. Without hesitation, she knelt down beside him. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked fiercely, squeezing his shoulder. He looked up at her, shock in his eyes. "The glass," he stammered, glancing at the remnants of the smashed bottle. "It's all right," she reassured him, her own heartbeat hammering in her ears. "Let us get you out of here." In that moment, the frightened crowd paused. They turned back, witnessing the unity and care that emerged amidst their panic. Derek returned, eyes surveying the scene with a fierce protectiveness. Claire glanced at him and saw the weight of responsibility flash across his face, but also determination. "Help is coming," he said to the crowd, guiding people back toward the center. "Let us not abandon one of our own." Somewhere in those fleeting seconds, Claire understood something profound. Their journey had transformed. This wasn't just about starting a forum or drafting ideas. It was about community, integrity, and showing up for one another when it mattered most. There was vulnerability in their shared space, but there was also undeniable strength. The murmurs began to die down as people steadied themselves, eyes returning to Claire and Derek. Together, they created a barrier of support around the injured man. A small group murmured questions at first, but as Derek moved closer, commanding their attention, the drama began to recede. "Let us not lose focus," he said, breathing deeply to calm himself, as if he could stabilize the chaos with his own steadiness. "This is our home, and we stand together, no matter what comes. Let us help him and show we care." Claire watched as Derek's words cut through the air, igniting a spark of courage. The crowd instinctively rallied around the injured man, hands reaching to assist, expressions shifting from fear to compassion. Together, they lifted him safely away from the remnants of the broken bottle and chaos. "Is everyone okay?" Claire called out, scanning the audience, her heart a wild drum in her chest. A few nodded, some still shaken, but she caught fleeting smiles start to emerge. It was a victory, small but precious. The seeds of connection began to sprout, nourished by genuine concern and acts of kindness. And then, like a soft whisper in the throbbing silence, she felt an undeniable resolve blooming within her, binding them together. They had survived, and maybe, just maybe, they could thrive. Derek stood next to her, both of them taking in the shifting mood of the room. Claire realized they were at the precipice of something bigger than themselves. The challenge wouldn't end with this incident, but it was a step, a testament to their commitment. "Thank you for being brave," Derek said quietly, his eyes meeting hers, filled with a mixture of gratitude and determination. Claire smiled, feeling the warmth of shared purpose. "No matter what comes next, we face it together." But even as she felt that bond strengthen, the front door exploded open, and a figure rushed inside, breathless and frantic. Something happened outside, and Claire's stomach dropped. What lay waiting for them in the chaos beyond would test the very foundation they had just begun to build. Claire's stomach twisted as the figure stepped into the room, drenched in panic. Alex, one of the community's youngest members, gasping as if he'd just run a marathon. The room, which had finally begun to regain a sense of calm, felt the air thicken with dread. "What happened?" Derek asked, his voice steady despite the tremor of urgency in the room. There's a protest outside. They're fighting." Alex struggled to catch his breath, his wide eyes reflecting the fear that gripped the crowd. Claire felt a cold wave of anxiety wash over her. It wasn't just a chaotic moment they faced anymore. It was the very fabric of their community at risk. Would the bonds they just started to forge hold in the face of conflict? "What do you mean, fighting?" Derek pressed further, edging closer to Alex, who was still trying to process what he had seen. "They've blocked the streets. People are shouting, I don't know why." Alex's words tumbled out, hurried and jagged. "Some of the old fights are coming back up. They're saying people don't belong here." The mood in the room shifted sharply. Where there had been a flicker of hope moments earlier, a storm of worry began to loom. Claire exchanged a glance with Derek, her heart racing. "Listen," he said, stepping in front of the crowd again, his voice grounding. "We need to understand what's going on out there. Standing together is more than just words. It's about taking action." Claire nodded, her mind echoing his thoughts. They had just discovered what unity felt like, but there was no way they could turn a blind eye now. She could feel the weight of the eyes upon her. They were looking for clarity, for guidance. "We have to organize ourselves," Claire said, pushing herself to stand tall. "If this is happening, we need to go out there, not to fight, but to listen. To show we care, even when it's hard." Alex nodded, his initial shock slowly morphing into determination. The crowd remained quiet for a moment before whispers started to fill the air. People were echoing her words as if they were rising in solidarity. "Let us gather everyone who is willing to go out there," Derek added, a fierce light in his eyes. "We show them we're not afraid. We're a community, not a crowd." The energy shifted, invigorated by a shared understanding of purpose. Claire felt her heart swell. This was at the moment they could truly define the space they wished to occupy in their town. As people began to rally around them, preparing to venture out into the uncertain chaos, Claire grasped Derek's forearm, grounding herself. She could feel the pulse of anxiety racing between them, but so too was it accompanied by a shared determination. "Whatever happens, we face this together," she said softly, and Derek's firm nod reassured her. With one last deep breath, Claire stepped forward, leading the charge toward the exit. The world outside loomed like a shadow waiting to envelop them. As they moved toward the front door, the sounds of shouts and clashing voices grew louder, gnawing at her resolve. She glanced at the faces around her. Some were afraid, but many held a flicker of courage in their eyes. They pushed through the door and into a scene that seemed to pulse with tension. Claire stood at the threshold, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The sight was unsettling, brimming with anger and confusion. But amidst the turmoil, she caught a glimpse of figures standing amidst the crowd, arms raised, determined to get heard amidst the chaos. Curiosity mixed with dread. What did this person know that could either help or ignite further conflict? Claire's heart surged, and though she felt fear gnawing at the edges of her composure, she couldn't turn back now. The noise wrapped around Claire like a thick fog. Shouts mixed with the sharp sounds of confrontation. The chaos seemed alive, breathing in angry exhales. She stepped forward, her heart pounding against her ribs, fighting to steady herself. It wasn't just a protest out there. It was an eruption of old wounds resurfacing. "Stay close," Derek murmured, instinctively moving beside her. His presence was a comforting anchor amidst the storm. They began to walk into the throng, the crowd forming an uneasy mass of bodies, faces twisted in various emotions: fear, anger, determination. "Listen," a voice cut through the clamor. It came from the figure, bobbing above the crowd, mesmerizing in an almost surreal way. There was a smooth confidence in their stance. "We are not your enemies. We share this place." Claire squinted, trying to catch clearer details of the speaker. A woman, with wild hair framing her determined face. She looked fierce, like she was made of fire, urging the crowd to see beyond their divisions. "We've been divided too long," the woman continued, her voice ringing with an urgency that seemed to slow the moment. Claire felt the tension quivering in the air like a taut string ready to snap. We're afraid to lose what we have, but together, we are stronger. Claire shared an apprehensive look with Derek. They needed to perceive this moment properly. Here was the key. Would it inflame the crowd more? Or could it unite them, as they intended? Maybe we should step closer, Derek suggested, his gaze fixed on the woman. She might have something important to say. Claire nodded, moving toward the front. As they pushed through the throng, she could feel the energy shifting. A few people began to look toward the woman, curiosity replacing some of their anger. Hope was glimmering on the edge of despair. The woman raised her hand again, and some began to quiet down, drawn into her message. Look, we all want the same thing, a home, where we belong. This place is ours together, not divided by false borders. Let us stand together. At that, a ripple of murmurs spread across the crowd. Claire felt the collective heartbeat of those surrounding her quicken, and for the first time, she sensed a shift, an opening of hearts. Let us listen, echoed someone near Claire, and others took up the cry, voices blending in an unusual chorus of agreement that seemed almost electric. But then, she noticed another group on the fringes, faces hardened, fists clenched. They were wayward folks who appeared unconvinced, dangerous embers that could reignite turmoil. The mention of unity brought rage to their eyes. Claire's heart sank. Stay alert, she warned Derek softly. Not everyone wants peace. As the woman pressed on, her words inspiring more chaos than calm. Claire felt a pang of fear. Would this moment cement the discord, or would it serve as a bridge to reconciliation? Suddenly, a shout broke from the angry group, piercing through the support that had been building. No one belongs here. You don't belong here. Chaos erupted once more, voices clashing violently, fears pouring back into the open. Carl, Claire shouted, recognizing one of the angered souls. Please, listen to her. But her plea was lost amidst the eruption. Claire, we need to do something now. This can't end in violence. Derek urged, grabbing her hand tighter as the scene turned more chaotic. With adrenaline rushing, she realized that she wasn't just an observer anymore. She was a part of it. But what could she say to turn the tide? Could words still stop an impending collision, or would they drown amidst the angry noise? While the tension pressed against her chest, she inhaled deeply, her voice trembling but resolute. We're more than this anger. We're connected by our stories. Let us share them. Would people listen? Would they dare to pause their anger and reflect on what truly united them? Claire's heart raced, hanging on a thread, waiting for the world to respond. The air felt electric, charged with uncertainty as Claire's words lingered. For a moment, it seemed like time had halted, gripping every person's heart. Derek looked at her, eyes wide. A mixture of hope and fear reflected in his gaze that a hush rolled through the crowd, almost like a collective intake of breath. Claire stood at the edge of a precipice, and she could feel every set of eyes on her, weighing her words. The riotous voices, the clashing hearts, they paused, forcing the echoes of her plea to settle like dust in the air. Your stories, the woman on the platform repeated, her fiery spirit glimmering with approval. Share them. Let us illuminate the shadows. Slowly, a wave of murmuring began to ripple through the crowd. Claire didn't know if it was a good sign or a dangerous one. Her breath caught in her throat as another voice emerged from the outskirts, a familiar one. Is that even enough? Carl stepped forward, disdain etched across his features. He folded his arms, his stance rigid. All this talk of unity, what about the people who suffer? What about those left behind? Claire's heart sank. She couldn't afford to let despair take root. Carl, I know it's hard, but every person has a story. Every single one of us is a part of this place, she said, her voice steadying against the torrent. Around them, some began to nod. The murmur grew, and fingers clenched tighter, as though they were still caught in an unyielding grip. What we're afraid of, maybe, is just misunderstanding, Claire continued, feeling a surge of energy flow through her. We've all seen hurt. We can either let that tear us apart or use it to build bridges. Ask yourself, she paused, locking eyes with Carl, what does it mean to belong? The crowd held its breath. The anger that had once saturated the air seemed to hesitate, momentarily replaced by a flicker of curiosity. Derek squeezed her hand, the reassurance grounding her as she took another step, speaking from the depths of her heart. Every time we stand apart, we only amplify the distance between us. But when we share our struggles, when we truly listen, that's when we can start healing. Look around. She gestured to the faces around her. We are all more alike than we think. Let our stories become the common thread we can weave together. As if a switch had flipped, whispers turned to murmurs of agreement. Claire felt the flicker of hope growing. But in the back of her mind, there was still Carl, stubborn and resolute, a stubborn ember refusing to be snuffed out. Talking won't pay the bills, he shouted back, and with every word, Claire felt the tension rising again. You think stories will erase loss? Hurt? It's not that easy. A fissure spread through the crowd, dividing those who felt the pull of empathy and those steered by resentment. Claire could see it happening before her eyes, a potential fracture that was both heartbreaking and dangerous. She had to act fast before any kindness evaporated into the ether. From somewhere within, a child's voice called out, "I want to be friends." The innocent words were simple yet brave, breaking through the tension like sunlight breaking the clouds. The crowd stirred, faces softening, vulnerability creeping back in. See, Claire seized the moment, channeling the energy. What if we embraced that willingness? What if we spoke? What if we dared to listen? The possibilities lingered in the air, a hesitant beginning. But the question still hung heavily. Could they summon the strength to confront their differences? In that instant, she felt a swell of determination, but also a wave of doubt. Would this fragile hope survive, or would the words crumble again under old fears? A figure stepped forward from the back, and Claire's heart raced. Who would dare? The crowd parted, and all eyes focused on the approach. Would this be a voice of support or another source of conflict? The figure emerged, and Claire's breath caught. It was Lucien, an old man whose presence had always seemed larger than life. He had weathered storms, and his face bore the stories of ages past, wrinkles etched with deep lines of wisdom and pain. Silence enveloped the crowd, as all sensed that he was a man who had carried burdens they could scarcely comprehend. "Listen," Lucien began, his voice resonating with an unmistakable weight. The crowd leaned in, curiosity piqued. This was someone they respected, someone who had seen and endured more than any of them. "I've walked through shadows far darker than most care to admit," he said slowly, his words deliberate. "I lost my family in a terrible accident a decade ago. The world pressed down on me, heavy and unforgiving. I, too, asked how stories could heal anything." His eyes flickered toward Carl, whose expression had shifted to one of reluctant intrigue. "But over the years, I've learned that we have two choices when faced with suffering," Lucien continued, looking around at the sea of faces. "We can let it fester and divide us, or we can let it connect us. Sharing our pain isn't about reducing it. It's about understanding that we are never truly alone." A murmur spread through the crowd, echoing the disbelief mingled with dawning hope. The tension seemed to dissolve a fraction more with every word he spoke. "Many years ago, I thought I was just a broken piece of a shattered life. But then I found a community of other shattered pieces," Lucien said, his voice strong, pouring life into the gathering. "I discovered strength where I thought there was none. A shared story became a shared burden, and suddenly, I wasn't carrying it alone." Claire felt a small spark ignite within her, a flicker of possibility blossoming. She exchanged glances with Derek, who was visibly moved, nodding as if encouraging this thread of connection to weave itself stronger. "We're all scared of the pain we might unearth in each other," Lucien said, his gaze penetrating. "But think for a moment. What if, instead of fear, we approached each other with compassion? What if we found the courage to listen, really listen, to the weight of each other's stories?" Carl's posture softened, his walls beginning to crack. Claire took a step closer, her heart racing. "Lucien is right," she uttered, passion lighting her voice. "The moments we spend untangling the knots of our experiences are the keys to unlock fences between us." "Ben," called a voice from the back. A teenager, eager and hopeful, stepped forward. "I used to think I was just an outcast, but when I shared my story at school, it felt so good. People came up to me and told me they felt the same way." Hope sparkled in Ben's eyes, emphasis ringing in his tone. "We have to be brave enough to tell them." The crowd buzzed again, more vibrant now. Voices joined with his, a symphony of passion and longing for connection. Claire felt a rush of energy, a moment where everyone had dared to dream of togetherness. As the rally began to rearrange around stories instead of stats, beyond hearts opened, Claire realized she had touched the edge of something monumental. The path to healing felt possible, woven together by the threads of their experiences. But just as hope surged, a shadow flickered in Claire's mind. What if old grudges resurfaced? What if Carl, still standing there, didn't he relent? The crowd swayed, eager to gather the stories, hungry for connection. Yet, an unshakable feeling brewed beneath the fear of what lingering resistance might surface when the final knot of past hurts was addressed. Are we really ready to confront what divides us? Carl's voice cut through the rising chorus, steady as granite. Claire's heart raced again, knowing there was still so much at stake. Would they break through or retreat into the shadows once more? The crowd awaited, breath held tightly, and Claire knew that this moment would shape their next step. Together they had opened a door, but who would walk through and who would turn away? As the tension hung in the air, Claire looked around at the faces of her community, some hopeful, some unsure. It was a moment, a heartbeat in time that demanded resolution. "Carl," she said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the tempest of emotions. "We all have pain. We all have stories. But holding on to anger doesn't help us heal. It only keeps us from truly living." The murmurs swelled, an undertow of support building behind her words. She pressed on, her heart racing but her spirit ignited. "Let us turn this fear into understanding. We can't ignore the past, but we can choose how we move forward." The crowd shifted as some began to nod, heads lifting slightly like flowers seeking sunlight. Lucien stepped forward, the authoritative wisdom of his years resonating with the audience. "I believe a community thrives on its ability to share burdens," he said, pausing for effect. "If we cultivate empathy, we grow a garden of belonging." Carl's expression softened momentarily. A flicker of vulnerability washed across his face as he grappled with the words unfolding in front of him. Claire saw could the tapestry of division begin to unravel here? "Everyone has faced challenges," Derek finally spoke up, his voice cutting through the simmering tension. His presence became a reassuring beacon in the chaos, recognizing that is the first step towards solidarity. "It's time to discard the narratives we've held on to of us versus them." Claire stepped beside him, drawing strength from his resolve. "Together, let us be brave enough to listen to one another. Let us commit to being there for each other, even when it's uncomfortable." In that moment, Claire felt the pulse of change coursing through the crowd. For the first time, she noticed heads snapping back and forth between Carl and herself, as if they could almost see the ideas bouncing around in the air, pregnant with potential. Another crowd member raised a hand, voice shaking but firm. "What about the resources? What about the support that's so often withheld?" Claire turned towards the voice, a shiver of gratitude running down her spine. "Yes, exactly," she exclaimed. "We can leverage our resources together to create support systems that uplift everyone. And I'll help facilitate that," Derek added, his tone earnest. "We'll build that coalition together, but only if we take this journey as one community, not separate entities." As Claire glanced around, hope blossomed brighter than before. The barriers of anger and resentment shifted. Energy crackled like electricity, igniting a passion that hadn't been there moments before. Carl's eyes glimmered with uncertainty, but also the slightest hint of understanding. "But can we really change things? Can you truly guarantee that we'll help each other without all the politics?" His voice quivered, weighed by history. A comforting silence fell, and the crowd rippled with anticipation. Claire felt a surge of warmth. "Change isn't instantaneous, it's a journey. We all commit to it. And in doing so we open discussions, understand struggles, and share resources. There's no promise of perfection, only hope and hard work." Lucien took a step closer to Carl. "I've lived through cycles of division, and I can tell you, our greatest strength lies in connection. Let fear be replaced by action." The crowd leaned forward as if the air itself buzzed with expectancy. Claire could feel hearts awakening, hanging on to each sentence like a lifeline. Carl shifted his weight, brow furrowed. "Okay," he finally conceded, hesitating but stepping somewhat closer. "I don't know if it'll work, but I get that we need to try. We can't keep going like this." A cheer broke loose from the crowd, An exhilaration mingled with disbelief. Claire's heart soared as the intensity shifted, the vulnerability spinning into the beginnings of unity. "We can start right here and now," she exclaimed, grinning as Derek joined in, excitement reflecting in his eyes. "Let us break into small groups, share our stories, and determine a path forward. We tackle our issues through connection." As the crowd erupted in energy, they began to split into smaller clusters, and Claire felt like a weight lifted. She locked eyes with Derek, who, brimming with a shared sense of purpose, leaned in closer. "Let us work together on this," he suggested, his voice a soft echo against the undeniable swell of hope. "Absolutely," Claire replied, her heart full. That laughter mingled softly with murmurs of encouragement. She felt the air around them buoyed by a newfound spirit. The once foreboding chaos had begun to transform into the foundation of community healing. For the first time in years, there lingered a feeling of possibility in the room, a light at the end of a long, tangled tunnel that it wouldn't be easy. But they were all ready to stand together and face the journey ahead. They had recognized the threads binding them, and slowly they began to weave a tapestry of compassion, understanding, and unity that would stretch beyond that night. As the darkness began to recede, a dawn of change emerged. Claire's heart brimmed with gratitude for each voice willing to share and listen. She turned to see Lucien nodding in approval, Derek by her side, and all around, people engaging in dialogue, their passions renewed. This wasn't just a celebration of change. It was the genesis of a new narrative intertwined with hope, the kind of healing that radiated warmth and possibility. They had opened a door to a future shaped by their stories. Together, they faced the path, ready to walk hand in hand into the dawn. Now was the moment for them all to commit to what came next. This is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.